So today I'm here to talk to you about being a very messy, non-methodical, not committed, and not good at it record collector, because you don't have to be the coolest person in the room. This is where my record collection started in the 1980s, the 1970s even, with a Fisher-Price record player, and I listened to storybooks on it. Eventually, I graduated to a bigger record player. And this lovely piece is the first piece of vinyl that I saved up my allowance to buy. It took several weeks because I was 8 and it cost about $15, which was an awful lot of money. And I don't have a copy of this record anymore because I wore it out. The reason that I loved Julian Lennon so much was because I loved the Beatles so much. I didn't have older brothers or sisters who were cool and taught me about cool stuff. It was all about my parents' record collection. I remember the White Album in particular being one I was told, don't touch it, we'll help you. And eventually I graduated to other formats. So vinyl was obviously going to be too expensive for me to collect as a child. And I moved on to mixtapes pretty quickly. I had this Fisher-Price player where I recorded little tapes. I played tapes for myself. There was a lot of talking into tapes. This was one of my favorite earlies because I remember learning about Debbie Gibson and hearing she wrote her own songs. And it made me realize I could write my own songs. I could do that too. Like, I'm not that different than her. She's older than me, but not that much older. And these songs are good, but they're not that great. So that was big inspiration for me, the idea that music was accessible. And then when I was in junior high, the Discman came out and that became what I listened to albums on. So now we're already 3 formats in. I didn't even talk about 8 tracks, which definitely were a thing in part of my life. And I'm buying CDs at this point. I've gone from vinyl to tapes to CDs. Music is on all these formats. And in my small town in Texas, Hastings, was the store that you went to buy records. It was the only store in town that sold records. And if they didn't have what you were looking for, you weren't going to get it. But when I got older and moved to Dallas, this store, Bill's Records and Tapes, was the place that you went, I found. And it was run by an old guy named Bill, who, when you walked up to the register with your purchase, nothing in the store had a price on it. He would look you up and down and look at what you were buying and decide if he liked it and tell you how much it was going to cost. This Juvenilia EP by Liz Phair, I think I paid about $20 for it because he didn't like the look of me. But I had friends that worked at his store and they told me eventually, don't buy anything there. Just tell us what you want. We'll go buy it for you. So after college, I moved to New York, and this is what a record store not in New York looks like. There was this guy that sold vinyl on the street in Union Square in the 2000s, and that was low key the best place to find a great deal. And we all noticed he had little stamps on his records, and they were all from Princeton Record Exchange. So on a trip to New Jersey, I found Princeton Record Exchange. I found lots of albums, including this Let's Active, the very first Let's Active album, which is Mitch Easter, who was REM's early producer. And I was really obsessed with jangle pop and REM, but also really obsessed with a girl who loved Let's Active. And the best part of finding these records back then for me was when you'd find this little stamp on it. This is on the back of my Let's Active record. And I was wondering who owned it before me. Was it a rock critic that I really love? Was it some radio DJ at Princeton? Where did this album come from? And we'd walk around for hours talking about these things. And this Elvis Costello album was one of the first gifts that a friend gave me when I bought my first record player as an adult in my 20s. And I love Elvis Costello so much also, but it was so exciting to get it and hold this again. So eventually in 2011, when Spotify came to America, obviously I signed up for an account right away. This was one of the first playlists I created. It's one of my oldest. You can see some songs from 2011 in there. And I kind of have moved on. But then there's something about the first kind of way you listen to music that pulls you back, right? So I was in a record store in New York around 2014, and I saw this Jesse Coulter album, and it spawned an idea. I was working for CBS at the time, and we were doing these videos, and looking at her picture on it and thinking about Julian Lennon's picture and what it meant to me on his album, I thought, what if we got artists to hold up vinyl and talk about the artists that inspired them and how cool it would look? So we did that with Sheryl Crow. Now, here's where I was at in my personal record collection at this time. I'd moved across country twice, from New York to LA to San Antonio back to New York. And it was time to clear out some things. I couldn't keep shipping boxes across the country if I was going to keep moving. So I cleaned it out. I kept that Strokes record, which is why you got to see it. And I moved myself over to a digital collection mostly. I kept the things I really loved. And I found that having the best audio equipment possible is the most important thing. I highly recommend Sonos speakers. And if you hook them up with a Bluetooth connector to your record player, the sound is amazing. You don't even have to have a great record player. So this Josephine Baker, though, I bought a record player again. I hooked it up. And this Josephine Baker record is the last purchase that I made. It was a random one I found at Half Price Books in Dallas. And it sounds amazing. And the through line is I've been listening this year to Josephine Baker, who's my intangible. And then Spotify tells me what I've been listening to on its playlist. And there's this fascinating disconnect for me of what I'm listening to in an analog world, what I'm listening to in the digital world. So for me, music is really about the memories that I associate with it. It's not about the format that I listen to it on. It's not about owning things, collecting things, accumulating things. For me, it's all a story. It's all memories. Thank you so much.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool.